My name is Bill Baer. I'm with Support Partners. We're a Microsoft business partner. We've been working with Microsoft and MovieLabs on these new virtual production methodologies and constructs. And so today I'm going to talk to you about the past, present, and future of Project Greenlight. So what we've been finding out, and we talk with a lot of different virtual production teams, is that they've been wanting to find out what is the true cost of a shot. And it's because of the impacts, obviously, of cost on our production processes. And most people are wanting to know the real number, and they define that by all the revisions that go into it, right? They want to know what all that impact is. And they want to know that up front before they make the decision. So when I make a change in my script, what is that real impact going to be? That's the ultimate goal. We're not quite there yet all the way, but we've made significant progress. So we're going to talk about that today. So just to ground us in a definition here before we get started, what's a virtual shot? I just kind of put up this definition here that's pulled off the internet, but I wanted to make sure that everybody understood it's not just artificial intelligence generated shots, right? This is everything from LED to CG to motion workflows, everything in hybrid in between. That's basically what defines a virtual shot in the context of this entire conversation. Now, in order to measure the true cost of a virtual shot, we really need three things. And we haven't had those three things up to this point. The first one was a common language that we could all speak. What is a shot? What is an environment? What is a location? What are the relationships between those things? That was the language over there on the left. We had a lot of fragmented systems. We've been using, all kinds of different programming tables and all kinds of different special effects programs and so forth. And a lot of our data is buried in those systems. And then lastly, we had no canonical cost models, so no common way to measure or figure out what the costs are. So we've been working on all of these independently, and in this project, we started pulling together into one. So the first thing we'll talk about is this shared production language, and this is where MovieLabs has done a tremendous amount of work. You may remember in 2020, they announced their 2030 vision. We're now 6 years into it, and one of the things they've generated is this ontology for media creation. This is a tremendous body of work that now gives us all the relationships and the objects for a virtual production. So we can look at creative intent, we can look at production activity, we can look at automation, we can look at downstream analysis. This is phenomenal. Right? This was the base point of what started this project, really, was having this ontology. Now that we have the ontology, then we got to talk about fragmented systems. So how do we start connecting those together? And in this case, what we were really kind of scoping these on were these things down at the bottom. And what new thing came about was agentic AI. Now suddenly we could use context and semantic reasoning to figure out all these different disparate pieces, how they fit together. That ontology helps us understand what those pieces are. So you can start to see these key things down here at the bottom. I won't read them off to you, but that's what they're doing. And then lastly, the standard cost model. Now this is the part that we don't really have figured out because everybody uses their own. But this is why today I'm going to do an early read of my call to action. I want to work with studios. I call each one of you to come forward because that's what we're looking to do, is to find studios who have their cost model, and that's the secret third piece that we need to bring to bear. University of Southern California on their project already had theirs, so they brought it to bear, but each customer is going to bring their own cost model into this situation. Even though we don't have a cost model, what we found there's three different characteristics about a cost model that's really critical towards this. And one of them is we want a cost model that represents intent and not just spend. So we want to know why you measure what you measure, not just that you measure this thing. We also want to stay coherent around changing conditions. So as things change on the production, we want to understand how those are impacted in your cost model. And then lastly, we enable comparison without forcing uniformity. That means we're not trying to build one cost model for everybody, for the whole industry. It's impossible. It would have already been done. So we're looking to do just one for each person. Okay, so there's 4 partners involved in this project. MovieLabs, which is, we've talked about, is define the language. Then we have Microsoft Azure, who's really the baseline of the entire AI and inferencing layer and all the infrastructure. Then Support Partners, who I'm part of, we are the systems integrator, more or less, right? And so we've also brought forward our own technology, which is called a content intelligence platform that sits on top of Azure, as well as an agentic AI system that does all the coordination and orchestration. And then lastly, the studio, which is all of you who brings that cost layer, that cost model, as well as all of your desired know-how and questions you want to get answered. So what did Greenlight do, right? What did it prove? So first of all, there was a number of insights. I'll allude to more later, but the first one that was really eye-opening was we saved a bunch of money on locations because we were able to consolidate them. We had too many locations out of the script, but we didn't realize that. Under normal circumstances, everybody would have gotten their jobs, they would have went out, they would have filmed in 10 locations, and everything would have been great. Using the agentic side of the AI side, we were able to consolidate down to 8 and save 200 grand, okay? That was both also by improving the scheduling of those locations. Then in addition, we were able to generate on-compute, ready-made compute that also was done via API, and that saved us additional dollars. Now I'm going to come back to this in more detail, and there's a bunch of other value props later on, but these were kind of 2 high-level ones I thought were quite interesting. Now, in addition, what did we use from Microsoft? What's the key components that formulate the infrastructure? So in case you don't know what these are, there's Azure AI, which is really the whole kit and caboodle of all of the different AI models that Microsoft has in Azure Foundry. There's Azure Fabric that allows us to go and connect to all these data sources. There's Microsoft Graph that sits behind Microsoft 365, so we can actually see what people are doing within Office, Teams, when they're making reviews and approving different revisions and so forth. All of those are signals that now can be captured by AI and help you do your project planning, help you continue your operations. And then in addition, we have Azure Platform Services, which is your typical compute and networking and so forth. And then you have the data platform over there. What we do in Support Partners in that next piece is we've created a content intelligence platform. A lot of people get it confused with a media asset management system, but we see it's the next evolution of where digital asset management systems and media asset managements have gone before. So most of those are basically focused on building an archive of content that allows you to integrate with a bunch of your tools and do workflows. What we're doing with content intelligence is trying to help you answer key questions by understanding the content and also the structured information in your world. So things like, how can I get a budget from a script? How can I do semantic archiving, searching across it? How can I also get the true cost per shot? That's the last one, that's the formation of this project. But the project actually goes beyond just answering one question, it answers multiples through the content intelligence platform. So obviously, as a customer, you're not sitting still. We're looking for customers who are interested in participating in the continued evolution of this project to go from what USC did to something more commercialized, right? Because that was for academia and trying to proof out the point, which I think has been well done. And now we're looking to take it to the next level. Just kind of finish out on some of these measurements that we've pulled out of this project so far. We talked about the 200K. In addition, here comes that hidden script cost that you mentioned before, right? Which is at 60K. So where did that come from? I would say, it came from a variety of different places, but if I had to put one thing on it, it was all the change management that had to go on from the script. And those changes, nobody understood the impacts of those when they were made. And so what we were doing was basically forecasting, in that case, what those changes would cost, because we were able to quickly ripple them out across that ontology and understand the repercussions of that all the way to the end. So that's where the kind of saving the hidden script costs, because what they could do is, by knowing what the changes would cost, they could make other decisions in a more timely fashion up front. So now, we obviously accelerated some timeline because we weren't doing a lot of manual change management throughout the process either. A lot of this was rippling through in a more automated fashion. And then the margin improvement was able to really take these were all kind of effects of the causes that were at the top, right? You're going to get better margin as you reduce costs. So ultimately, we're looking for partners, as I mentioned before. So this is kind of what an engagement looks like for us. As we're looking for small, medium, and large studios. We're not looking for one size fits all, but we're looking for people who are interested in being, kind of an early adopter and somebody who wants to break new ground. And so we see this project as being able to continue evolving and using these technologies to continue improving the process. So if you want to learn more about what the system can do, we have a pod right over there on the other side of that intelligent media orchestration where you can find Air Fusion, and you can kind of look at that a little bit more. We also have a bit more about our Catalyst platform, which is a professional services layer that sits on top of it that did a lot of this tailoring of this. So please come by and visit us. And thank you. If you don't mind, reach out, scan. It's my LinkedIn profile. I'd love to hear from you.